real pleasure to be joined by him. Next up, we're going to be joined by Peter Mann, Digital Strategy Lead from Xerox, who are one of our event partners. Peter's going to be asking the question of how we're going to thrive in the hybrid world of remote and office-based work through his presentation, From COVID and Beyond, Delivering an Anywhere Workplace. We're going to bring Peter in after the presentation, and we're going to have time for a few questions. But for now, we're going to get the presentation loaded up. So it's going to over to Peter's presentation, and we'll be catching up with him in about half an hour's time. Thank you very much.
So hi, my name is Peter Mann. I'm the Digital Strategy Lead for Xerox in the UK. And in this next 20 minutes or so, I'm pleased to have the opportunity to share with you what has been happening for our customers on shop, office and hospital floors during this crazy year so far, and give some insight, hopefully, as to what is ahead of us. No doubt everyone at this event has a passion for digital and will have spent time focused on customer experience, managing customer journeys, coping with the radical shifts and behaviors we've all experienced in recent months. But actually, I would like in this session for us to consider more the employee experience and how we, as a community of digital transformation junkies, can help teams as diverse as nurses, bankers, retailers, and our own software development teams perhaps, evolve their workplace to meet the customer in this hybrid world everywhere they choose to be. After all, employee and customer experience, to my mind, are two sides of the same coin, and we need to make sure these things are moving in sync. So the topic or the question that sort of inspired my session this week was off the back of our own Prime Minister, Boris, putting this campaign out where he basically has stated, this House believes that getting people, back to work will improve services. Every customer I've spoken to personally in recent months believes that we will return to work, but in some form of hybrid, office, home, anywhere based working, whether it's 3 days in the office, 2 days at home, whatever it might be for different groups. But the challenge this poses is not just the immediate one of how we overcome the immediate confidence boost that returning to work safely requires, but how do we power up our tools and methods of working to support what inevitably means having a transient workforce and workplace in such a way that really actually returns us to growth and enables us to compete. In simple terms, simple equation, I think we'd all agree, a poor employee experience does equal a poor customer experience. So how do we move that forward? To a degree, the advantage here is the fundamental trends are not new to us, not new to any of us, I suspect. This one particular slide I drew from one of last year's primary service decks. We know the shift in work styles has been ongoing for some time, but clearly the sheer scale and acceleration of what COVID has brought upon us has left us reeling somewhat. And not so much just geographically, but more specifically departmentally and culturally. Across our organizations, when we've all been deploying digital transformation projects or change projects, we would have typically probably just worked with an initial team, one department, a marketing team, a service delivery unit, maybe one site or service area, and we would have probably been using agile tools, so we would have been able to go through discoveries and alphas and betas before rolling things out. What was different about this COVID event meant that every department, every business function was thrust into exactly the same challenge at exactly the same time. So the sheer scale of the challenge is challenging. And then culturally, the question perhaps more simply put and more in our personal hearts when we contemplate this ourselves is better put in this great YouTube video, which I thoroughly recommend, which is fundamentally in your heart. Do you believe you need to be in the room or the Zoom where it happens to excel at what you do? To explore that through this session, I wanted to look back over the last 6 months of our own experiences with a multitude of customers and a multitude of sectors. You can see various logos there from health to banking to manufacturing and government. And then project forward on the projects we're deploying now and some of these customers and others and the tactics they're deploying to plan for this new operating model. And through the lens of Xerox data that we have and the customer needs that we actually have great insight into what's actually going on in the workplace. Our equipment and service and software deployed in so many offices, many of you today will probably have them in your own facilities. We have a great insight into what is actually happening on the ground floor and how people have been reacting at an individual and team level to the challenges. So we're going to go through the three primary acts, and I accept it's kind of UK timeline based. Other countries' lockdowns were at different times, but we find that, Act 1, that kind of initial reaction, business continuity needs, that was approximately April to June. Act 2, the kind of recovery phase, we're right in the heart of it now. Most projects now are about how do we return to a degree of productivity and that difficult phrase, new normal. And most projects seem to be running approximately to the rest of this calendar year on that basis. And then we're planning, what does the rebuild look like? How do we get back to market? How do we get back to revenue growth? How do we improve service delivery if we're in a citizen-focused industry? How do we rebuild, looking ahead to the beginnings of 2021? So let's begin. Let's go back, not that we necessarily want to, but let's go back to the beginnings and the lockdown and the sort of activities we were taking part in to survive in some cases and to cope with disaster recovery.
Around the world, now more than ever, frontline workers are stepping up to solve problems and overcome challenges. At Xerox, we're inspired by their efforts and proud to say Xerox is here to help. We helped a lab in Europe create a new process for data sharing the results of COVID-19 tests. In Texas, we created a system for printing hospital wristbands color-coded for visitors. In the United Kingdom, we helped UK grocery chain Morrisons print and deliver 50,000 social distancing floor signs in just 48 hours. In Reno, Nevada, we printed hundreds of lesson kits for local students. In several states, we set up printer networks for pop-up field hospitals. Xerox team members also helped prepare the USNS Mercy and the USNS Comfort for their deployment. Around the world, we are working with our customers, from global corporations to small businesses, to implement new processes, set up new systems, and ensure business continuity. We are helping cities, states, and countries across the world to print vital documents like unemployment and welfare checks, health bulletins, and business loan information. Xerox is also partnering with Vortran Medical to manufacture for healthcare providers as many as 200,000 disposable ventilators by June. We are grateful to first responders and caregivers. Their courage is our inspiration. From everyone at Xerox, we say thank you.
So wow, so every one of us, I hope, is working for a company that has achieved something amazing, and I'm sure that's the case. Under extreme time pressure, responding to something we'd obviously have hoped never to have had to respond to, but amazing things happened when we pulled together. But equally, in practical day-to-day terms, a substantial amount of change had to happen on the shop floor. To alter how we were working in different environments to support that immediate disaster recovery need. And just a few examples of the sort of things that were going on in our world and our customer base. So we take that first example about the COVID-19 mobile app. So into NHS customers, as well as other organizations such as banks and institutions. But in healthcare particularly, there was a need to enable staff to in effect manage rotas and deployments remotely for the first time via mobile. So we're talking huge issues with redeployments of staff, nurses, ICTU workers, doctors, etc. Are they working on their normal site? Are they being redeployed to a Nightingale hospital? Are they available for work? Have they unfortunately had to self-isolate themselves? There were immense problems with rotoring and making sure you had the required team to obviously treat the sick and needy at time of being. And that was a great step forward and actually started adopting mobile in environments that had never gone into those kind of environments before. Equally, the next one, just that pragmatic issue of we can't get into our offices anymore. We've all experienced this. And we couldn't get into our HQs, our buildings, but yet all of our post in practical terms was still arriving there, whether it's very much needed things such as checks and payments through to application forms, whether you're applying for a passport or insurance policy or making a claim. Substantial volumes of mail were arriving and no one could get to them. So for central government departments, local authorities, financial institutions, within 7 working days, it was amazing to watch. We were able to set up digital mailroom facilities that were scanning and uploading in and outbound mail. So in effect, employees working from home were able to receive these critical documents, process, decision, and respond to them in physical and digital form as easily as in practical terms as they would an email. And finally, again, we may all be one of these people, but many of our customers had to move up to 10,000 or more employees to a home working basis for the first time in their lives. A huge spike in equipment, different types of equipment sales and deployments. Yeah, obviously printing and machinery is a critical part of our service delivery to this day and a critical part of most of our customers' operations. So we needed more machines in people's homes and executive homes. But more so, we also deployed software solutions, so people could access Xerox Digital online and access all of their enterprise documents, workflows, systems from the office, from home, from their laptops, and still get access to those critical processes. So just a few examples of what we've experienced, and I'm sure you're all the same, and what you had to do and how you had to respond. So that was Act 1. We got the lights back on, critical functions were maintained, but in more recent times and where we stand today is, how do we recover? How do we start finding a new rhythm? How do we build trust? How do we build confidence in our workforces to return to a level of productivity that works for our customers at the end of the day? And equally, it's a wonderful opportunity for testing, learning, and innovating, clearly under pressure, but nonetheless a great opportunity. As an analogy, in terms of eat out to help out, and then more recently I noticed actual city law firms are starting to emulate the Eat Out to Help Out scheme. I noticed that in the statistics, 100 million meals were bought across UK restaurants, in restaurants, in just 13 days that scheme was available. That was 50% more meals that were sold in the same August month last year. So to my mind, a genius example of a confidence and morale boosting activity that demonstrated, with the right incentive, people were more than prepared to return to physical environments, and hopefully many enjoyed the experience as well. And I say it's interesting to note just in last week's papers that city firms are looking to emulate that success by incentivizing us to get back on that commuter bus and work together again. And that's simply from that logical basis that firms know we deliver more value together and are prepared to incentivize us to do that. I thought it was also interesting to share some of our own data. This represents our own engineers' access to client buildings. And obviously our engineers' building access is the same as all employees' access to buildings. It was clearly dramatic. I've centered the data around the same kind of approximate 8-week cycle, correcting for countries with different lockdown dates. But you can see that with the exception of Germany, which is interesting of itself, clearly it was dramatic. We would all understand that at the beginnings of lockdown, by definition, access to workplace, access to collaborative spaces was somewhat curtailed, and it was dramatic. But equally, you can also see that the response time, the recovery time varies dramatically based on culture and leadership decisions taken. So you can see within a matter of just a few weeks, several countries were starting to return, yes, not to full normal workflow, but significant levels of traffic, hence the amber. And towards that week 7, week 8 mark, we're seeing countries return to access levels and employee accessing buildings on a as open basis, frankly, as we were before. But, hands up for all the Brits in the room. Clearly not all countries shared that. And clearly some are yet to return and have access to those buildings in a significant way. Our own research showed, we actually did a survey through May and June of more than 6,000 senior leaders across our customer base and countries of operation, both employees and senior leaders. And we also established that, the demand to return to work is clearly there. More than 80% of people hoped, believed, wanted, however they interpreted the question, to be back in an office environment, a collaborative office environment, hopefully soon, but certainly within 12 months. And again, within that, the majority felt this would be on some level of hybrid basis. And we've seen that similarly emulated in more recent reports from Gartner and others. So we know people want to return. We know people believe in the return, and we know firms believe that there is value for money, frankly, hence the attempt to encourage us with financial incentive to return to work. The real question, looking at the comparisons of different industries and different countries, is actually how do we build that trust? How do we build that rhythm back in? And what does therefore a journey for a safe, engaging return to work actually look like in our offices? And our contribution to this, working with obviously various customers that we've described, is much like many of you in the audience today would recognize from customer journey planning. The same discipline is required here. So those same types, looking at the end-to-end journey to complete a transaction, either online or offline, we applied the same logic to how do we get employees to complete a full productive cycle or sequence of work at the office. And that begins from home, actually. The first step, if you're going to return teams effectively to the office, is you need to deploy, preferably on mobile, because that's the preference, and we use our mobile services for this, but people need to be able to have the confidence to return by, for instance, booking a desk. You maybe have all had to do that yourselves in some shape or form, but I need a desk. If you're lucky, you might be able to book a lunch to arrive at your desk. You might need a shared meeting room, or in a hospital, a clinic room, and you need to bring certain people together. And you may need to complete your health and safety governance information about your own status and symptoms and self-isolation. But by beginning that journey at home, giving people the confidence to say, you get on that tube again, you will actually have a facility to work in when you arrive, and your facilities will be available to you. And at the same time, we've controlled capacity and health and safety in the facility when you arrive. Secondly, then, because the workforce is transient, I might have been working from home on a Monday. I'm now coming into the office environment on a Tuesday. Actually, my colleagues, though, might still be at home on that Tuesday. So we need to make sure my work is consistent, that what I started on a Monday, I can finish in the office on Tuesday and share with colleagues online on a Wednesday. And having one consistent, what we call the digital hub, to enable all employees to share and access all of their document services, physical and digital, via the same method wherever they may be, is enabling that to happen, that consistent productivity wherever they choose to work. And then practical things, physical signage. You will have seen the video Morrison's as an example there, a huge volume of signage, in that case in a retail context, to guide customers where they need to be for positive reasons, helpful reasons, and yes, safety reasons as well. Equally, that applies in our office workplace. Chairs we can sit at, rooms that we can't be in, distances we need to keep. And then the final contribution from Xerox that's been a significant benefit in this return has been to implement touchless controls. Equipment is critical to most processes, and it's also a key component of what we deliver. And the uptick in touchless control for obvious benefits in terms of deploying our voice control features, but also being able to deploy and download the app to your own mobile phone, so you can actually control all of our equipment functions from your own personal screen to avoid sharing, has been a successful rollout for many environments, clinical and office. So we are returning, we're finding our feet, we're building a rhythm again. But that's not going to be good enough, of course. That just gets us back somewhere close to where we once were, and probably, given the obvious capacity restrictions and challenges it faced, not even back to where we were in March. And if we're going to compete and win and return to growth, improve the services we deliver to our citizens, beat the competition in the marketplace we're operating in, we need to do more than that. And Act 3 that our customers and everyone in this room is planning for and considering as a community of digital transformation specialists, how are we going to upscale the experiences and the tools and the methods we give to our teams, our friends, our colleagues, to enable them to work faster, better, more productively wherever they are each day of the week. That's our true challenge, I believe. So interestingly, just going back, this is a typical curve of most paper to digital or digitization initiatives, whether that's in banking, health, clinical, retail, e-commerce initiatives. It's not just Xerox data, this is collective shared data from a variety of sources, including GDS. The curve follows a very similar pattern. When you offer an effective digital alternative, uptake is typically strong. By definition, it's a new service, it's a new alternative that has benefits to it. But by and large, services hit a glass ceiling, somewhere around 2/3, interestingly, very consistently, whether it's a banking statement or an online governmental application. Two primary reasons come through in all surveys for that. One is, by definition, if you give people a choice, not everybody will choose it. So, there's a significant percentage of people that are content with their current. They don't want a paperless statement, as a for instance. But actually, equally, the other strong criteria here more relates to back office and employee experience. The focus, by and large, for many has been on the customer experience, the website, the mobile application, and how we interact with companies, how we self-serve ourselves as consumers. But when that process then comes into the business, things slow down again a little bit. Legacy systems, ways of working, slow down the process, and it's no longer digital, and that defeats some of the object. So the question for me is COVID the trigger to kind of break through this glass ceiling and create a new initiative to really power up that employee workplace so we can meet the customer where they want to be? And clearly, we're too early in the journey to know exactly what will happen, but I wanted to show, just in this final sequence, some real examples across industries that gives me a lot of positive hope of significant investment and some significant success being achieved in these moves. So just some high-level great examples of how employee experience is starting to mirror and match customer experience to bring things together. In healthcare, in the digital patient world, key customers such as NHS Imperial, a major trust, but mimicked in many other trusts up and down the country. From a clinician perspective, one of the most significant shifts in digital transformation has been the digitization of medical records. So the paper documents that have been following us all since we were born. Hopefully your medical record is very skinny. It can be 3 or 4 folders deep of various complex information. What's been going on for several years now is the digitization and acceleration of digitization. So all of that medical record information is available to the doctor, the medic, the clinician on their iPad. That clearly powers the Zoom medicine, as Matt Hancock would describe it, but that ability for the clinician to work anywhere, to handle triage via video conference, but more so actually for the data within the medical records to be searchable, to be more readily available for the system to highlight priority matters in those medical records, priority drug histories, for instance. So that employee experience there is significantly accelerating to meet the challenges of this new way of working. And then on the flip side, to meet it, patient experience in terms of the shift to mobile applications to enable patients to book and choose and book appointments, to manage the flow of when they arrive into a hospital, and equally to start receiving guidance, healthcare, personalized information about what should they be doing to care for themselves, drug regimes and the like delivered back to them into their, yes, mobile phone if they have it, equally still for many in paper accessible formats depending on the condition of the patient or their carer. So both moving in sequences is spectacular to watch. And these changes are mimicked in other industries. In retail, possibly one of the most hot-fought hybrid world environments we see today, with the major online players, obviously such as Amazon, starting to attack high street presence, and equally our traditional high street brand names investing heavily in online, recognizing that success requires us to succeed in both environments. Morrison's a spectacularly successful business and customer of ours at scale, obviously has partnerships with Amazon, so we see some of this, and most of it centers around obviously customer loyalty data, which we've been active in managing physical loyalty programs, physical cards for some time. But actually, as people start moving through an online and store environment and point of sale shifts to digital, and we're able to react to what the person did online and offline together, that brings forth wonderful marketing opportunities. But equally, we have to meet that with the flip side. The employee experience needs to match that. So employee mobile devices need to provide advice and guidance. What should I be stocking? what is customer demand going to be for today based on footfall, weather patterns, and the rest. What do we need to display and put at the front of house to maximize sales? If the employees don't have that information, if they can't react to that information, then all that wonderful data processing insight we've got is all for naught, because the right goods simply aren't in the right place at the right time. Again, that interplay of employee and customer experience is crucial. In government, we see the same trends. Land Registry is a fantastic example, a true innovator, been winning many awards for their digital transformation programs, and it's to all our benefit. The employee experience must speed up there for all of our benefits because of the time it takes to process a transaction. I'm sure we've all suffered the stress of waiting the weeks and months it takes for title deeds and the exchange of contracts to move through. That can take weeks and months. With digitization, deploying automation, and increasingly looking at even a blockchain future for the documentation we process, the target is to coordinate the employee behaviors of mortgage providers, solicitors, the land registries, and the buyer and sellers to bring that transaction time down from weeks to as basically same day will be possible. And finally, as an example, financial services, another hotbed of hybrid world collisions between online startups and our high street branches. But a great example for us, insurance in particular comes to mind, where we're seeing employee capability being increased to meet the customer where they want to be, where we're deploying artificial intelligence on, for instance, claims, to direct the human claims handlers to the pertinent information, to the most important claims, to the missing information, to the potentially fraudulent information, to zone in, to speed up the processing times, improve productivity, and by definition it's digital, so they can work wherever they need to be. And on the flip side, of course, I hope you've never experienced this, because it would mean you've made a claim, but you may have had an insurer today who's enabled you to upload your own evidence, for instance. So if you had a flood, being able to take your own photographic evidence and upload that directly into the claims case management system. Again, another way of accelerating the whole process, which is to everyone's benefit, and better connect the employee acting on your behalf and hopefully processing that claim and getting things done for you and getting you whole again. So we see this throughout, and I just wanted to summarize by looking at how do we collectively cross this chasm. It's going to be one of our significant challenges in the weeks and months and year ahead. Returning to that theme, if we're going to excel in this hybrid world, we have to empower employees as much as we're empowering our customers to connect. That to me is going to be a fundamental tenet of success and will define some of the winners and losers in the marketplaces of the immediate future. So just to summarize in terms of how can we help, what are the key themes of this, and how would I recommend moving forward? We have a significant body of work, case studies, customers that you've heard about today that love to share, love to connect with their colleagues and opposite numbers to help us all through that. We have significant models to help us through some of these three primary themes I've talked about, which if you contact me personally or a business after today or after this event, we'd be happy to share more information and connect you with other customers and people who have achieved these things. But across the key themes of connecting employee experience and mapping those two journeys together, ensuring we meet the customer everywhere they are across your business, and empowering your teams to work anywhere, we have those models to share and those experiences gained, particularly over these last 6 months, to achieve that. Detailed models around how we're connecting digital and physical touch points across a journey, but equally connecting the customer with the employee activities and looking out for those hotspots and dropped connections as customers flow through your own business. You know, making sure that we address the entire business. As we noted at the outset, COVID affected every department. It forced us all to work from home. It is not good enough and not effective enough just to make sure our customer-facing staff, teams, marketing colleagues, and systems have that connection back up and running. Our distribution, our logistics, our legal teams, our finance teams, equally need to be able to work effectively and at speed if we're going to complete transactions, if we're going to complete operations, if we're going to complete applications effectively. They all have to have access to these new methods of working. And finally, how we address that and bring that together for our customers is we describe it as anywhere workplace services. Our collection of connected hardware, software and services, regardless of whether you're working in the office on a Monday, at home on a Tuesday, collaborating with your teams locally or nationally on a Wednesday. It's the same sequence of tools and events, user experiences to make sure those tasks are completed effectively. And we can share, say, more on that. Just to finish on an absolute positive note of optimism, I'm more than confident that we will excel in this hybrid world of the 2020s that we're walking into. Speaking to the Brits, speaking to the UK audience that we have here, in terms of that survey, again, drawing back to that, the UK was one of the most prepared nations. Only 4% of respondents said they were not prepared to be able to support working from home or remotely in these times. The vast majority of businesses had the confidence to enable remote working and keep going and get through this, which we all know we've achieved. And to the benefit of anyone seeking budget and sign off and project governance from our boards, there is a clear and strong appetite to invest in these fields, to invest in employee experience in the workplace, to meet that customer everywhere. So let's take advantage of that. Let's take advantage of that opportunity, that positivity, that desire to invent, to experiment, to test that our boards have. And yeah, let's let our colleagues excel at what they do wherever they need to do it. So thank you for your time today. I believe we're moving over to some Q&A now. Thank you.
Real in-depth look into kind of employee experience, remote work, anywhere work. So thank you very much, Peter. And hopefully Peter's joined with us now. Are you there, Peter? Just bear with us while we bring Peter into the room. I think I see him now. Peter, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much for joining in.
Great. No worries. Good morning to everyone.
Good morning. So thanks for a great presentation. It was a real good in-depth look at the issues that you were trying to raise there with employee experience, remote work. We've had some questions coming in on the chat, so I think we best start with those if that's okay with you. So we've got one in here. Other than the security and workflow automation, where do you see advantages in DocuShare, Flex, and team availability over Microsoft Teams?
In terms of thinking through how are you connecting both experiences, I think the key theme I highlight is it's a hybrid world, and that's what we're focused on. The fact is the vast majority of our customers are working in both environments today in some shape or form.
Yeah.
There are every process in critical environments, whether you're a hospital, a government or bank, exists in both formats. Hence that fidgetal phrase I use. There is going to be paper, there's going to be certificates, there's going to be physical interactions, there is equally going to be digital interactions by definition. And to complete an end-to-end interaction, to complete a deal with a customer, to complete an operation with a patient, whatever industry you're in, you're going to be moving through all of these states to complete it. And that's going to be the reality for quite some time, I suspect, for most organizations and employees. Mm-hmm. So let's be frank, our personal strengths is we coexist in both.
Yeah. So
when that was a very specific product brand question, I appreciate that not everyone on the line would necessarily recognize the name. So DocuShare is a particular Xerox product brand for how we manage documents.
Yeah.
But of course, it deals with physical and digital workflow, and it passes through both in the same regards. So if you exist as a hybrid organization, if the way you work exists in both physical and digital formats, frankly, that's where you're going to find a lot of strengths in our own products, and that moves us away from some of the pure play digital products. If that answers that question.
Yeah, thanks for that, Peter. And then a question in from NHS Caroline. So I'm assuming Caroline works for the NHS. How do you drive a paperless healthcare setting when even a pandemic is unable to convince staff that this is the time to change?
That's interesting. So again, I'm going to hark back to my hybrid theme a bit, that I do not believe in light switch changes happening in critical environments.
Yeah.
Okay. So presenting to, I must admit, by the way, I'm the black sheep of my personal family. I think I'm the only person who doesn't work in the NHS in my family, whether it's my wife, my mother-in-law, etc. So very, very aware of that sector. I, as a project manager, a program manager on some of these things, I would never go into a critical care environment and say, as of Monday morning, we're stopping. The thing that the thing you ended your shift with on a Friday that was perhaps physical, that will end. And on a Monday morning, you best make sure your iPhone's on, otherwise you can't do your job. No, no, that projects don't work that way. That would not be great. So by definition, I was saying employee and patient experience, or employee and customer experience, has to move in sync.
Yeah.
If we don't make sure they're moving in sync, then we're going to have serious problems. Yeah. So by definition, not all of our patients are ready for that. Not all of our staff is ready for that. And critically, if the end-to-end process isn't ready to be pure paperless, and that phrase paperless, then we're going to have a serious problem. And again, that was my theme, that unless these things are moving in sync, we're going to have problems. So it's about progressive steps. It's about accepting and embracing that we were in a hybrid world. COVID has perhaps accelerated some of those changes, of course, but we're still very much there, and we need to manage that journey, and we need to bring things in carefully, but in a synchronized way. So it's not about going paperless. It is about progressively transforming the experience in sync of employee and patient, so we take everyone on the journey together. Is that a fair answer? It definitely is not a light switch world we live in here.
No, I completely get that. You know, slow shifts, and you know, there's, with a huge complex organisation like the NHS, I guess it's quite difficult to move through that, you know, instantaneously. So final question, we're going to be coming in. How important is consistent internal communication with move back to the office? So I guess you can draw on your own experience there, and kind of how you're doing it, because I noticed that the presentation looked like you're in your office, so obviously hybrid working is working for you. How has Xerox managed that process in terms of leadership?
Yeah, so I mean, certainly have to say our leadership has been very, very clear. We're obviously a global business, so policies, you know, begin at the top, and there's always, by definition, local laws, local practices, and local timelines. But there's been, you know, extreme clarity, I think, both in live broadcasts. So it's not just emails, you know, and it's just emails explaining what our policies are. It has been calls like this as a group and planning these things through. But yeah, very much I think I centered around Act 2 of what's going on right now, as if we're going to encourage people back to work, whether it's by paying us £55 more to commute in, as for that story, or otherwise. Consistency is desperately vital, because it is about trust. I think I deliberately showed that chart comparing different countries and different reactions. So clearly, depending how you communicate, and I think obviously leadership in these pandemic times begins with our political leadership all the way through. So if our political leaders are inconsistent, that clearly creates problems for individual companies to be consistent as well. But clearly, different countries have had very different experiences, and we've seen that in our own data. My colleagues in other countries like Germany have got back to the office faster, but that's more so because of local leadership, political leadership, more so than Xerox's leadership. But yeah, consistency is vital, because unless people feel confident and trust in what they're going to experience before they set off for work. I think that's the crucial thing as well. If you're going to get back on the tube, if you're going to get back on the bus, these are relatively nerve-wracking moments for an awful lot of people.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that if you are uncertain about what you're going to face when you arrive. If you're not really clear on, for instance, am I going to have a desk? Am I going to be able to allow it to sit down? And when I get that, am I going to be able to continue working on the same project, the same documents that I was when I was at home yesterday? Can I work collaboratively effectively with my colleagues who are not in the office today? If you're not certain of those things, then taking that plunge, taking that first step to get back on the tube, yeah, well, I why would you do that? You would have a lot of reasons not to very, very quickly. So yeah, that's vital.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Peter. Thanks for a really good presentation and for coming in live for that Q&A session. As you mentioned at the end of that presentation, if people want to get in contact with you once the event's wrapped or whatever, they can connect with you on LinkedIn. We'll also share some contact details for those so that they can get in contact with you. But for now, Peter, thank you very much for joining, and I appreciate your time and your insights there.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Have a great day. So thank you to Peter there for joining us live for that Q&A session. As mentioned, if you did want to get in touch, there'll be some contact details provided in the live text